and welcome to SUAANGAN. I'm your host, Erica Lute. On today's show, we visit Inuvialuit athlete and carver Angus Cockney. Our cameras caught up with Angus at his home in Canmore, Alberta. You are watching SUAANGAN, our strength, right here on APTN.
When I was 7, 8 years old, I remember going over to Fairbanks, Alaska, to do some races there in a mini midget class, and I think there was 2 or 3 of us in the class that went over, along with the older kids. So that was for me quite a memory, because even today I can remember taking that old DC-3 flight, a 6-hour flight from Inuvik to Fairbanks. It was a long time, but it was actually fun being in going somewhere and actually going to see some places and actually see a city like Fairbanks. And then from there it just carried on as I grew older. I traveled throughout Canada and throughout the US and to a few places in Europe. So skiing took me to places that I only read of, but I was able to see it through cross-country skiing. Yeah, that I think began way back in the mid-1960s. I mean, early 1960s, I think. I guess the program, the test program, which stood for the Territorial Experimental Ski Training Program, was inspired by a priest, Father Mouchet, who had come up to, I guess, work for the Catholic Church. And at that time, a lot of us students from around the communities up there in the north, the western Arctic anyway, were housed in Gloria Hall, one of the residential schools, and it was operated by the Catholic Church. Father Mouchet was one of the priests there, and he figured that this was a good chance to motivate some of the native kids like us, like me, to maybe take up the sport of cross-country skiing. I think that was, on his part anyway, based on his observations of us, living out on the land, and I think he felt that we had a lot of endurance and a lot of talent and a lot of potential to do well in cross-country skiing. So that's, I think, when it began, when Father Mouchet had approached the government for some money, and he was successful in getting that money and hired a coach from Norway, Bjørger Pedersen. And I guess the rest is history. And I received a phone call from a friend of mine in the East who asked me if I was interested in skiing to the North Pole. So I said, what? So it was quite an invitation. I think it took me, a couple of days to think about it, speaking to different people. At that time, my ex-wife, Trish, was there. We talked it over and figured that, yes, this was, a pretty good opportunity, because, it could be a once-in-a-lifetime chance, so that's what I did, was accepted the invitation to ski with Ice Walk, the International North Pole Expedition. That included 8 of us from 7 countries, and I just happened to represent Canada.
Among those who made the arduous 56-day walk to the top of the world was a Canadian, Angus Cockney of Tuktoyaktuk, Northwest Territories. He'll join us in a moment to talk about the journey, but first, a look at the welcome the explorers received after they flew out of the North Pole earlier this week.
The plane carrying the 8-member Ice Walk team from the North Pole landed at Resolute just before midnight, where it was still light out because the sun is up 24 hours a day this time of the year in the Arctic. The Canadian ice walker, Angus Cockney, was greeted by his wife, Trish. He's an Inuit whose Eskimo ancestors are native to the Arctic.
I mean, we expected, pressure ridges, the ice that gets piled up because of the drifting. We expected a lot of that because the Arctic Ocean is a dynamic environment. It's always changing, always moving. A lot of open water, polar bears, but we only saw tracks. Frostbite, which a lot of the others got. In fact, myself, I did not experience any of the frostbite that the others did. I think that was because of my experience skiing in the north and having learned how to regulate my body heat really well. So, if I did not suffer any frostbite, in fact, I did really well, and because of the training I had, the discipline I had with the test, the ski program, I applied those principles to my North Pole journey. Reaching the North Pole was a bit anticlimactic because when you do expeditions like Everest, you have a point that you want to reach, and you actually see that point, that pinnacle of the mountain. You go up any of these mountains as well, you see where you need to go. You canoe a river or something, you have a start and an end point. It's a little different skiing to the North Pole, because when you reach the North Pole, you're told by a GPS or some sort of electronic device that, hey, you're at the North Pole. So it wasn't anything we saw, right? And all we did was had to stop and rely on that reading that, hey, we're at 90 degrees, the North Pole, so we better stop. Because we were what the British call man-hauling, we had no dogs or any other mode of transportation but ourselves. We had to pull and push our own food and supplies and whatever. So we planned on some airdrops whenever we felt that we needed to. Whenever we felt that we were getting low on supplies and food, we just called in base camp and said, look, we need this, and that, and they sent off a plane, and we just waited for it. All the things that you expect from an expedition like that, but I said, no, this was actually fun. I had a great time.
You are watching SUAANGAN, our strength, right here on APTN. Welcome back to SUAANGAN and more from Angus Cockney right here on APTN.
I've sort of, I guess, retired from cross-country skiing for a number of years now, competitively, but I do still race at times whenever I feel like I could make or do well. My kids, I introduced Jesse and Marika. They're both, well, a boy and a girl. Jesse's 17 now and Marika's 14, and I introduced them to the sport very early, around 2 years old when we first bought them skis, and we were in Yellowknife at the time. And so Jess, what kind of training plan you got today?
It's an hour and a half of easy distance.
Easy distance. Okay. So, you want to go much longer? How much time you got left?
What time is it?
About 11:30.
10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? You, Ricky?
We got here at a quarter after.
10 or so? Throughout the years, I kept, coaching them and trying to motivate them to take up the sport, so I felt that they had some potential in regards to doing well, and therefore we moved down here to Canmore, Alberta from Yellowknife in 1997. And here at Canmore, they have the Canmore Nordic Center, the national training center for cross-country skiing and biathlon. So there's a great environment for them to excel in the sport because they have a lot of support with their peers. And to this day, you know, they've taken up the sport. They love it. They want to train and do well. And in fact, Jesse has a pretty good chance this year of making the national junior team and representing Canada at the World Junior Championships in Italy in late January.
Come on, Dougal, come on, kid. Come on, Justin. Come on, George. Come on, Justin. Time now, George. Come on, Justin. Got it. Way to go, Jess. Good job. All you gotta do is qualify or advance. Good boy.
And Marika is, you know, likely the best juvenile girl in Alberta, and in fact, probably in Canada, the top two. So I'm really glad to see that, and especially for themselves, they want to do it. I'm not telling them to get out there and, you know, bust their butt and train and try to do well. You know, when I grew up, I had that same attitude. I wanted to do it, and there wasn't anybody telling me like, you better get out there or else. You know, back then I wanted to do it. I wanted to be out there in 40 below, 45 below. It didn't matter. I wanted to ski, and they have that attitude today. So I'm really happy with them.
Easy, okay? All right. We'll catch you later.
They belong to, well, Jesse belongs to the Banff Ski Runners ski club. He's got a head coach there, training them full time. Plus he's got a number of friends, boys who he trains with. Marika is with the Foothills Ski Club based in Calgary, but she's skiing here. They too have a head coach, and you know, he's well aware of what Marika needs to do. These guys are experienced. Both coaches and both their clubs are experienced. Where I come in is to support them whenever I can, whether it's in waxing or doing splits out there in races, taking them to training, but also advising at times the coaches on, you know, where my kids should be at, and because I've got experience as well. So, but I respect what they're doing, and you know, I think I fall into a role where it's supportive now, and they really like that.
It's supposed to be kind of warm though.
I think when I was 7 when the sport was introduced to me and to the rest of us. With the test program, it was open to everyone or anyone who wanted to take up the sport. But the organizers, the coaches, kind of picked out some talented kids like myself and others who they felt could go, you know, a long way in the sport. So therefore, you know, like we trying it out felt that it was a good thing, and we just carried on with the sport, and it took us to many places around the world. In fact, for us who I guess, who took up the sport and carried on with it. I know I did anyway, for the simple reason that it was sort of an escape from all that regimented lifestyle, you know, the going to church, doing your prayers and the chores and whatever. It was, I think, a freedom out there and out on the tundra. So it felt really good. You know, it was quite a contrast from being in the school. You're sort of let go with these pair of skis, and you just had freedom to go out there, and it was quite exhilarating actually. You know, even in 40 below, it was you know, a lot of fun to be out there and skiing and you know, being with each other.
You're watching SUAANGAN, our strength, right here on APTN. Welcome back to SUAANGAN and more from Angus Cockney right here on APTN.
This is it, man. This is the studio down here in Canmore, downtown, in sort of the older part of the city. But in this area, it's a great part of town because you have a lot of detached garages like this one, where they're all run down and they're really a good space to do my kind of work.
Make a mess.
Make a mess, you know, make some noise. As long as you don't make too much noise, neighbors don't complain. But everything you see here is what I used to create right from the raw stone. Down here is well, what you see. I found some stone in southern BC. I went exploring down near Soyuz, Rosslyn area, Nelson, because based on my research on the internet, there was a number of abandoned quarries back in the early 1900s. So I went down there to see what I could get in regards to carving stone, and this is what I brought back. And this is some really nice stuff. They call it mighty white dolomite. It comes mainly in white, of course, but they got shades of green. I found it very interesting when I was driving through Cranbrook, BC, southern BC. I found some interesting looking stone, very green, and layered green actually, near one of the lakes. So I stopped and picked up a few samples and came back and carved out what you see here. Again, it's nothing special. All I wanted to do was experiment and see how this stone would work. And actually, this stone can actually be used for some really good carving work, I think. So again, it's very much roughed out, you know, just experimenting with the diamond cutting, the smoothing out of shapes. You know, you see a shape of a grizzly bear, a shape of a cougar here. Again, nothing special. In my early stages of being an artist, way back in 1988 when I started, it was all about the culture and getting back to my ancestry and all that. A lot of the artists are doing that still today. You know, they create you know, drum dancers. They portray the wildlife like walruses, polar bears, or seals, or whatever. Those are all, you know, cultural and very good, and it has been marketed to sell really well. I do a lot of that work in my early days, and I still do at times too here. But as I began to develop as an artist, I began to experiment with more contemporary issues. A muskox skull. Very nice, very unique, to down here, of course. When I show it to people, they can't believe what kind of dinosaur this is. But it's quite an attraction when people come in. I do have an idea for an art piece for this. I may be experimenting with bronze in the new year, so I may maybe create a mold out of this one and cast it and use it somehow in a bronze sculpture. So I'm just reproducing this image in a different way. So again, I do like to experiment, and because me being an artist, I like to be creative. And here with this piece, I figured it would be a nice idea to reproduce it in bronze and use it in some other way. So that's the idea for that one. In regards to showcasing my artwork, I send most of my works still to the north, to the Yellowknife, the Gallery of the Midnight Sun. They and I have a really good relationship in regards to artwork, and what I create here usually goes north, and so that's really good. I have sent some pieces to Vancouver from time to time, but I like my relationship with the Gallery of the Midnight Sun in Yellowknife, so I want to retain that and still work with them. And I do at times here in the south, you know, people know I'm an artist and they want, you know, personal commissions done, so I do that as well. Yeah. Big huge half moon mask, I call it, sort of telling the legend of the shaman's flight to the moon. Being half, you know, I'm trying to convey the point that, you know, the shaman is halfway to the moon. So you see a half moon mask. He's halfway there, and right now the mask is finished. So now I've got somebody making me a steel pedestal for it so it can stand up on its own. So hopefully that'll be done in a couple of weeks. So that's the mighty white dolomite stone that I found near Nelson, BC. A lot of the times though, I just come into the studio and just get inspired by looking at stones or whatever, or sometimes I have an image in mind, like that piece you saw over there with the half moon mask. I figured, you know, I think I would like to convey that sort of idea of a shaman's flight to the moon, but he'd be only halfway, so I found the stone for it. So a legend based on my grandfather's book. He had written about the Angakok, they call him, the shaman who did fly to the moon, or at times flew to the moon. I don't know if he physically did it, but I think it was talking more about the spiritual side of the culture, where I think in a trance-like state the person did fly to the moon. So there is a legend and a story about us flying to the moon. So that conveys the story.
Thanks for watching our show. Until next time, I'm your host, Erica Lute, SUAANGAN Inuvialuit.